So if I'm a thrower and I want to improve my velocity, but I'm also a little bit worried about, injuring my arm. Like I want to make sure going at the right pace where I can maybe increase a couple miles an hour every so often, maybe every couple weeks or whatever it is, and keep that, the injury in check. I don't want to be injured. I want to be stable. I want to do the right things. So what do you think is the most important?
I think the biggest thing is just doing things that you feel like you're obviously safe with, things you're comfortable with, but it's just going down to the basics from the bottom, from the ground up.
Ground up.
Yeah, so really using the legs and using the core. That's what's, like, I used to think dudes that had strong arms, they were the ones that throw the hardest, but it's really guys with the strong legs. Like you see those pitchers, they have those strong hips and those strong body. That's what drives it. They ran a study. It was like, you guys might know the study. It had EMG, so they stick needles in the muscle and they look what's most active. And it was the glutes were 90% of the drivers. So if you keep some simple exercise and you target kind of your core and your glutes, simple things, deadlifts, squats. If you're not comfortable with something like that, there's a trillion variations. If you still don't know form-wise, you can reach out to us. But very strict exercises, you want to train them in a speed way. So you're trying to get a lighter weight that's quicker, and you're going to be less likely to be injured if you have a light weight. And then something that's more of like a weight like resistance, a lot of resistance on you that's heavy. That's really what builds you up. Okay,
that makes sense. Yeah, because I think a lot of the athletes are thinking, well, I need to get my throwing arm stronger. Well, that might be certainly part of it. That's interesting to know because I didn't know that. So you're saying 90% is glutes, essentially.
Yeah, it's literally like butt, hips, glutes.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you think of those home run hitters, like I think of guys like Frank Thomas, his hips were.
Yep.
He had a big hips, and that's where all his drive came from.
Well, when you think about it from a pitcher, right? You're throwing down a hill, right? You're throwing from on a mound downhill. So that's the game was created that way for a reason, to use the leverage of the mound, right?
Absolutely. Force drives force. If you're light and you don't have those muscle mass to drive the ball off the mound, you're exactly right. You're not going to be able to use those forces that are already there for you. So, if you can get in and get through lower body exercises, squats, deadlifts, lunges, that's really what's going to be increasing your velocity for all your pitches to come. That's really where you can get a lot of your strength from.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, guys, I think it's crucial right now because I really do believe, and I was guilty of this too as a young player, I think most of us believe the opposite. I think we believe that it's, we kind of acknowledge like, yeah, maybe my legs can help, but we definitely don't commit to it. And when we're doing the motion itself, when we're throwing, but we also don't commit to it like in our training regimen in itself,
Yeah, how often do you feel like you go to the weight room and you want to lift legs? For me, it's like
that's the worst. That's your least favorite part.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'd rather lift arms there. I'd rather get on the bench press. But for baseball players, it's critical, and it's going to protect that arm. You wouldn't think if your legs are strong, like your arm's going to have that protection, but it totally will because it's just an extension of that throwing.
Yeah. And from my perspective too, and you can elaborate on this, from what you think, but it's using the legs, but using them in like the right way. So like obviously a pitcher, right? You're on the mound, you're storing up all the energy into one leg, which is your rear leg, right? So I'm storing up all my energy into my back leg, and then I'm seeing how much energy I can transfer from my back leg into my front leg, and it's kind of like a seesaw effect of then getting everything over top that front leg, and that front leg's got to be strong enough to stabilize once it lands too. Right? What do you think about how each leg, what kind of parts of that?
You're exactly right. It's like transition of forces. Like if you're just doing, even I know we talked about squats and things like that, but if you're just doing those segmented movements broken up, you're not able to put it together and gain speed. So you're trying to do movements that really incorporate the whole body. And like we continue to hit on, the legs and the core of their driver, but you want to put them all together. So things more, so like you can do like a dumbbell snatch overhead. We can attach some videos to kind of target some of these exercises, but it's about putting it together. And like you're talking about transitioning from the back leg to the front leg, same thing, transitioning from the legs to the arms, transitioning from the core to the arms, legs to the core, legs to the arms, all the way up, kind of like just in a systemic system rather than just doing, hey, I'm just going to do biceps today. Well, hey, if we could do a row and we're kneeling in a position that's working both, like we're getting a little bit of biceps, we're getting some back, that's, putting it together.
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. All right, I got a couple questions for you.
Yeah,
I want to get, I want to get stronger. I want to get more velocity on my throwing motion. Right? I want to be able to throw the ball harder. Bands or weights? What's your thought on both of those two things? Which one should I be doing?
There's definitely advantages to both. The bands are good, like we kind of talked about in a different video about warming up. They're not as high intensity, like weight wise, but there's also like a lower risk with them. You're less likely to be injured. You're not going to drop them on yourself. You're not having as much strain when you're using those bands. So the band's good for a warm up. The weight's more so for the strength training and building that mass and that strength that's really going to transition to the field. So, but you have the likelihood, if you're not doing the form correctly or you have too much weight, you're more likely to injure yourself doing those exercises versus doing the bands. So they both definitely have their advantages. I'd say use them both. Variation is key. If you're squatting with weights on there, or you can even attach the bands to the bar and squat with bands on the bar. Those are great for speed, like trying to drive up against the band. Does that
So
kind of answer?
would you say, in a nutshell, bands are more for avoiding injury and weights are more for the improvement of velocity, in a nutshell? Or is there still a little bit more to it than that?
I think there's always more to it, but in a nutshell, you're definitely right. Like if you're rehabbing or waking up, that's more the bands. When you're getting that weight that's on your body, that's more so for the velocity.
Yeah.
So you're definitely.
What about with improving my arm? Because if I can use my legs, and that's one thing, but I also can add my arm to go faster with it, and then I get the full circle, everything working together, hitting on all cylinders. That's probably when I'm going to hit my peak for velocity. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. That's when I defer to you guys as the baseball coaches. I'm like, okay, here we got healthy and we're strong. Now you put the form together where you're talking about arm angles and positioning, and you're putting that step by step form wise of like either throwing from the mound, throwing from the infield, throwing from the outfield. You're the specialist with that. It's like all the technique and the angles for baseball in particular.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about too, you hear a lot about like the weighted balls. Do you have any? Do you see anything with the weighted balls as far as guys getting injured with it, or it's how effective it is for improving the velocity?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very cautious with the weighted balls. I believe that puts a lot of stress on your joints. So I used to think when I played, it was like the more I threw, the stronger my arm would get, and I totally debunked that now. I don't really believe that. It's more so. The stronger I get, the harder I'll throw. If you're continuously throwing, it's really hard on your body. Throwing is really like a negative effect on your body. That's when your joint's being pulled off your arm. It's by 1.5 times your body weight. So it's really about strengthening those muscles. We continue to hit on it from the backside, rowing exercises, rotational exercises. That's going to get it strong. So I think if you're using the weighted balls, for me, it's like putting almost an added stress on. Now, I know there's guys that do correct form, they do it the right way, so you get some advantage with that. I'm not saying it's totally out of the picture. I just think and believe what the research says, if we get stronger from our body up, that's going to really prevent the injury, and it's going to increase the velocity. They go hand in hand, so they're together.
That makes sense.
What do you think? Have you guys used the weighted balls much?
When I played a long time ago. It feels like at least it's been probably 12 years now since I played, and we didn't have any weighted balls at all. Like, to be honest, like it was very, if they were out, nobody was using them because we never used them in pro ball. And so for me as an outfielder, it was more about, hey, long toss is like the foundation of like, you got to be doing long toss routinely in a way that's systematic, right? You're starting at a distance that might be 50, 60 feet and constantly building up where you're getting, starting small, getting as long as you can to where essentially, if you got a football field, it's perfect, or a baseball field, use the outfield, foul pole to foul pole, whatever. But you get to a point where like, I'm of the belief, if you want to actually learn how to throw the ball harder and have more velocity or further in long toss, you got to test those muscles. So, I get to a point in long toss where I was literally throwing it as far as I could possibly throw a ball and get at least 10 of those in. Now, if I was there all day doing that, I'm not going to be able to throw for the next 2 weeks. So you got to be very cautious, and it's going to be tempting to want to go like, another foot further and further. And I do think you got to do it more than once or twice. But I think there's a sweet spot number for everybody. For me, it was about 10. So I'd get up to about building up, throwing the ball as far as I could, get 10 of those throws, and then working back down too is one thing that I did when we played. So 20-minute throwing routine roughly, and it's not all at 50 feet. It's not all if you hear long toss, it doesn't mean like just start throwing as far as you can right away. It's got to be start small, build up to the biggest distance, and then kind of work your way back. That for me was one of the biggest things.
I like that. I like where you talked about like it's not something you're going to do every day. You got to give your body a chance to recover. If you went into the gym on Mondays and you lifted chest every day, Monday to Friday, like you're going to be worn down. So given that adequate time to recover, that's the number one injury for arms is just overuse. Like, you see so much now when you guys are at tournaments, pitch count and how many innings that they've thrown. Yeah. So if you are getting that exposure to that long toss, that's great. Just not constantly all the time giving it a chance to recover. So I really like that. That's great.
I'll talk pitch count too if you want to talk briefly on that. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
We definitely talk pitch count.
We have travel teams where you're going to play 2 games on a Saturday and you could play between 1 and 3 games on a Sunday. So you need arms as a coach, but you need to be cautious of how many throws and pitches are being made by all of your guys. The old school philosophy is going to be to throw a lot more. The new school philosophy is going to be to really manage it. But sometimes even it's going to surprise some of you guys, but like sometimes I think we overmanage it to where it's like, we're limiting what we can do. Now, probably what you see more often is a guy throwing too much instead of too little. Let's be honest. That's probably the main problem. I think if a guy can throw, and it all depends how well he's doing, obviously, but if he's doing well and he can throw somewhere in the range of 60 to 80 pitches, I think I think I've seen good things with that. And it depends the age as well. I think when a guy at a young age gets into 90 plus pitches, that's something that should not be happening. And I also think if a guy throws 40 pitches and he's feeling good, we don't always have to jump the gun on pulling him out as well. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree with you. I have like a chart, and we could even attach it to this video, that it goes by number of pitches thrown, number of days rest. But every time I talk about that chart, I'll pull it up. Sometimes we'll go somewhere and we'll talk to the team. I'll throw it up there, and it has like age group. If you threw 50 pitches today, you need 3 days rest or whatever per age group. But I always kind of like put my asterisk next to it. But it's different for every guy.
It really is. It's different for the guys in the majors. It's different for all of them.
It's different for all of them. There's dudes that are worn out after they throw, not many pitches at all. Yeah. But if you're, like you're saying, if you're not given some time to build up to it, if you're building up to it, that's when your arm gets stronger. But you're just not doing it all the time. I think something kind of like an epidemic now is we have guys and girls out there that aren't cross training and doing different sports. So I believe in baseball season, you do baseball and then you try to pick up some different sports. That gets your body some time to adjust, and your brain is better. Then when when you got drafted, you were able to go all to baseball and just focus totally on baseball. So later in life, you still have room to grow in baseball. Like if you're 10 years old and you just play baseball, there's only so much growth you're going to get in that time period. That's just what they're saying about different movements and how the brain works in learning things.
I think for sure. I think two of the things that stood out to me from what you just said there is everyone's different. 50 pitches is not going to affect me the same way it affects you or that guy. So that's a range, right? And so that's why I think sometimes we get so caught up in like, what's the number? What's the number? We got to listen to our body and see how we feel as well. And then the other thing with playing multiple sports, man, like for me, I love football growing up. And so I was a football player all the way up until high school. And I love the sport and still love watching it. But if my main 2 sports were baseball and football, and sometimes it would be other sports as well. And for some of you guys, you're 3 sport athletes, if not more. It's, there's a couple of things. One, you got to be a kid. You got to be able to play multiple sports. And 2, you're not doing yourself any good by forcing, keyword, forcing yourself into one sport at a very young age. It doesn't do you anything good. It'll give you just from personal experience, being a coach, running practice, we run practices twice a week. And sometimes if we do it, if we do it anymore, we're not getting the turnout because guys are playing other sports. But we like to encourage that. Like, you know, I'm not trying to force everyone to just come to me every single week.
Definitely.
But some, you know, I'll be blunt about it. Some parents have problems with that. That's something that, again, we encourage them to do that and play multiple sports.
And mentally and physically. Like, I mean, if you're punching the clock every day, it almost turns into a job versus, well, you know, you're here to have fun and perform at your best. Like, doing the same thing every day, you just get worn out. And I think that's why some of the best players don't even reach it to college or reach to that next level, that pro balls, because they got worn out when they were, you know, 10 to 15 years old because playing 15 different tournaments in a weekend. You know,
the burnout's a real thing.
It's real.
And it doesn't matter how motivated you are. Like, I was very motivated, you know, to want to be as good as I could be, but like I definitely had times where I faced burnout, and plenty of guys around that I played with, either teammates or played against, same thing. So you know, it doesn't matter who you are, because, you know, we're all human. We're going to face burnout if we get tested or pushed to that level where that can come to be.
Yeah, and those different variations, those different sports kind of reset your mind.
Yeah.
Reset your body. It's so good for you, just not having that mental fatigue. I mean,
100%. All right, so I want to wrap up with this. If I am, you know, I want to get my arm going, I want to be able to improve my velocity, but also do it in a smart way where I don't get injured. You know, what can I do? Like, what can be things I do at home to start up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always try to, and it's like we talked about with the pitch count, it's specific to that individual. Generally speaking, we want to try to break our body parts down and then have kind of like one full body day where you're trying to put everything together. So I try to have people do a little bit of speed for their lower body. So that can be speed squats or trying to be explosive with the lower body just on the lower one day. And then you can have like more of a strength training for the lower body where you're putting a little more weight on, you're more of the slow and controlled reps. And then same thing with the upper body, a speed day, and then more of like a weight day. And then you're put them all together and have one full body day. That's really the best way to get that power and get that strength through without having to like individually build you a plan for you. We can talk exercises more in specific of like, hey, if we see this is what we like to do. But really, like we've been talking about, it's the backside of the body, the muscles you can't see in the mirror. You want to make sure you're hitting rows. You want to make sure you're hitting deadlifts. Make sure you're hitting glutes and squats. A lot of those muscles are what kind of gets, you know, you get in that position from throwing or swinging. Those ones on the backside are weak. So that would be like my general card to you. Yeah. We can go into exercises more on like specific ones. If I would say a pull, some kind of row, some kind of carry, something where you're carrying a weight, some kind of pressing movement. So that could be a push-up, or it can be a little more complex, maybe a dumbbell bench press or an incline bench press. And then really some kind of fast thing, sprint, throw, med ball throw, one of those three. So carry, throw. You want to do slow and controlled, so more of a strength training. Something that you want to do at a velocity, so it could be sprints, it could be that lower body exercise. And then something that puts everything together. Really, those would be the big things. And then a push, pull, and a carry.
Yeah. And look, part of what we're doing with Carmen and I getting together is we're going to put out some content. We're going to give you some exercises on what you should be doing as well, for strengthening, for warm-up, for everything. But I think, you know, if you guys can understand, one, maybe use this guy as a resource if you really want to, you know, if you're really serious about like your goal, whatever it is, trying to improve your velocity, trying to become the best player you can be. You're going to need a coach or somebody to get in front of to really, you know, do it the right way so that you're not wasting your time and, you know, you're not making mistakes. Because we've both been through enough mistakes, and now we realize the right way to do things, and we want to make it a shortcut for you if that's possible. But I think even just from a basic level, you know, we talk about the muscles and what's important. We talk about basic things like even getting out and throwing long toss with a buddy, your dad, a teammate, whoever. Doing that more routinely is going to be big. You got to start using the muscles that you're going to be using and practicing it. So I think, you know, from my perspective, if you can start basic and get going, you know, then you can start to fine tune your crafts, as opposed to feeling like it's rocket science right away where you have to have everything figured out, you know, day one. I think just get some traction, I think, would be good for probably most of us who are sitting at home on the couch eating chips too many days, more days than we should, right?
You're exactly right. Consistency over a long period of time, hard work, and you're not going to be Michael Jordan on day one. You just got to slowly build up to it. So I love that. That's exactly right.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up with that. Again, it's just us chatting about, what to do as athletes to get the arm stronger, how to prevent injury, some other things outside of it that all kind of interconnect one way or another as well. And so we'll wrap it up with that. And guys, stay tuned for the other videos. And I got a lot more value to give for you. Again, this is all free stuff. We just want to provide value and help you out. And if there's a way to go to the next level as well, and you want more serious help, feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Justin.